So now I would like to introduce Simon Friederich, and he will talk with us about AI alignment. Are you?
Sort of. Yeah.
Sort of. Sort of.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Thank you, Simon.
Yeah. Thanks. Hello, everyone. Thanks for having me. So I hope that you didn't stimulate the wrong expectations. So I'm just a humble person with backgrounds in physics and philosophy who has in recent years thought a lot about what might happen with AI and what consequences might be. I'm not an expert in machine learning or so, right? So, and I don't know what currently goes on in the leading labs or so, and what goes on in the state-of-the-art governance function. So what I have done is I have thought partly with colleagues about a couple of topics. Can you hear me well? So no, yeah, that I think are fascinating and it's certainly relevant. And I like to share a couple of those thoughts with you. I have kind of an overarching theme. It's a bit more general than what you said and a bit more modest, but I think also quite plausible. Namely that it's unclear at present how that can possibly happen in accordance with the values that are now most important to us as liberal democracies. So that can that doesn't sound good, and I'm really worried. But maybe for no good reason. I don't know. But it also leaves it open what exactly might go wrong, or how exactly those values might suffer. And the literature, basically, my work that is in the background of this, and where you can read up if you're interested. So all of this is available except one that is under review at the moment. Are these texts? So I mostly worked on this in the last year, in 2023. Actually, all the papers were mostly written then. Now the last month I have actually done almost only philosophy of physics. But so I have. This is a paper called Symbiosis, Not Alignment, as the Goal for Liberal Democracies in the Transition to AGI. That was the first paper, still the most optimistic one. Then I got more worried. So this is the second one here is one what I wrote with an Australian colleague about a slightly more mundane challenge, namely how we go about authorship and intellectual ownership in the era of more and more advanced AI systems. And then with my colleague Martin Bouzeri from Belgium, I wrote an article on natural selection in AI. And finally, I think most pertinent to the theme is this one that is currently under development with Leonard Dung. Leonard is just 30 and he's a fantastic philosopher of AI. So you should definitely get him. He's now in Bochum. And he's very knowledgeable about just all of this and much more. He's even more pessimistic than I. But so we wrote this paper against the Manhattan Project framing of AI alignment. I will tell you roughly what's in that paper, which I hope will soon be accepted by a journal language. But this is in the background. And now the plan for today is there's now a bit. I didn't know also that you would tell everyone this, so I will go quickly through my next slide, which cover partly the same ground. I call this the AGI transition, the kind of period that we are currently experiencing, or that it's coming. Then I will give you a kind of panorama of perspectives. That's, I think, a responsible thing to do in a sense. So auto confronts you with this particular existential risk level, call it vision, and I do the same. But there are also very legitimate other perspectives, and maybe we are wrong, right? So I think you should also acknowledge that. So maybe this is just the wrong angle. And I just want to flag here that this is my rough and ready characterization of perspectives on this AGI transition, which I think the majority, even of experts, see this differently. I don't know about the majority, but many, and I will tell you about that here. And then I come to this paper, a Manhattan Project for Alignment, that will have a very organic connection to what came before. I will talk about the natural selection thing, and briefly about the ideas for kind of symbiosis that I started out with. So that's the plan. Let's see. So dozens of companies really explicitly want to build artificial general intelligence, which OpenAI defines as systems that can automate basically any economically useful tasks of humans. That's a bit of a bad definition because, of course, like what is economically useful changes with technology. So, right, it's not so clear what that means. But you see that's often held against the very notion of AGI that it's hard to define, but that really doesn't make the phenomenon go away, right? That this can something that will clearly fit this characterization can come along, or is actually people are working towards bringing that about. From OpenAI's mission statement, I find that interesting to quote. Maybe you all know it, but I was impressed by what they wrote. Then, when they were set up as a non-profit, I think that was actually even before 2018. But when you go online, this is the year that appears there. That's why I put it there. OpenAI's mission is to ensure that artificial general intelligence, AGI, by which we mean highly autonomous systems that outperform humans at most economically valuable work, benefits all of humanity. We will attempt to directly build safe and beneficial AGI, but will also consider our mission fulfilled if our work aids others to achieve this outcome. That's a touching humility, no? So I think, so why did they do this? I don't know to what extent the original motivation was authentic or so, but I think they really felt that they are responsible people who are aware of the momentous character of the moment that they were going to bring about, so they would do it much more responsibly than others. It's a bit like in the US with some justification. When they did the Manhattan Project, they thought we will do this more responsibly than Hitler, and I guess well, at least that was true. But yeah, so I copied some other benchmark results that are for the recent O1 model that was released now just a couple of days or weeks ago in full. You see what for a certain math competition, a code competition, that it really is much better than GPT-4o, which is the standard project that you also, I think you will still have to, I pay for it. Right? Could I get it for free? I hope. Really? Okay. A limited amount. Okay. Well, I also have access to O1. No. But you see that for the PhD level science question, it's better than the expert human. Is always the danger that one is a bit too impressed by this, because for humans, of course, these tests are designed so that someone who is very good at this, it's a good measure for human skills. But for a system that was also trained on that material, it may not be such a great measure for their skills when it comes to other applications. So you have to keep that in mind. I work quite a lot with these models, the GPT-4o and O1 now myself, and I really oscillate between being very impressed and finding it super useful and thinking, okay, this is not helpful at all. You're just making my life harder. And stupid machine, right? So we are in that transition, right? So that's many of my colleagues react to that with these systems are never gonna reach our level, but I think that's naive, right? So I mean, so many people are working on, and so much has already been accomplished. So it will not stay at that level. Just think about when in 2000. When did the first ChatGPT come out? 2022 or so. Like, it was much worse then. And we have at the university, so this is not on the slide here. We have had to overhaul our entire examination methods, and I think my colleagues largely just don't do that, right? So means that we are students are just cheating like mad in many cases. So the weird thing is for some of my colleagues, for some of my courses, I now go to exams, because then that's independently has great benefits. But I do this because of the cheating possibilities, and then I use a lot of AI to design my exams. and it works quite well for that. Whereas the irony here are more improvements by O1 for these exams. Yeah, you can look up much more statistics if you're interested. This is a quote from the abstract of the paper that came with GPT-4, right? That was already 1.5 years ago, which has this sparks of AGI in the title. They write that we demonstrate that beyond its mastery of language, GPT-4 can solve novel and difficult tasks that span mathematics, coding, vision, medicine, law, psychology, and more without needing any special prompting. Moreover, in all of these tasks, GPT-4's performance strikingly close to human-level performance and often vastly surpasses prior models such as ChatGPT. Given the breadth and depth of GPT-4's capabilities, we believe that it could reasonably be viewed as an early yet still incomplete version of an artificial general intelligence AGI system. Right, and it's usually expected that because of positive feedback, like so you could use these systems for more efficient coding, or so once so this that the progress will accelerate, or at least once one is at the sort of human level, one will relatively quickly go to the superintelligence level. I think these arguments are largely plausible, though I mean they're not watertight, so it's not like mathematical demonstrations. But okay, now my panorama of perspective. So personally, but you can, I'm curious to hear what you think. I feel when I just look at society, I'm on some social media or also newspapers and everything. I feel I hear 4 kind of voices here about this in response to this phenomenon, to the AGI transition. I feel there are people, maybe a majority of people, who see AI as kind of regular technology. One that, for instance, Europe is like just at the moment losing the race compared with the US. Then AI as hype, right? So people who feel that this is still is actually more Schein than Sein. So in German, right? So people who think that, especially the kind of worries that Otto has laid out in the beginning, that this is more something more marketing ploy by the company. Then AI as doom, like that's the existential risk observatory, I would say. And then AI as a technical alignment challenge. I think that's a completely different perspective, even though the latter two are actually often seen close together. Let me elaborate a bit. So from the perspective of AI as a regular technology, this is the view that AI will be largely beneficial, just like other technologies, like think about cars or so, or techniques or technologies of energy generation, the internet or so. They have, but probably not significantly more. And perhaps superintelligence is possible, but if it is, it's still far away. And perhaps actually it's not that transformative as some expect, even then. The main risk at the moment is that we, especially Europe, or maybe then in the larger picture the West, compared with China, falls behind in this development because it's a key technology, right? Which will be great. I think it's fair to roughly describe the views of Yann LeCun and Andrew along these lines. I have asked GPT-4o whether this is adequate, and it said yes, you can say that. But I don't know. You cannot trust it, right? It's it tends to say yes, my experience. Right. And interestingly, I take that somewhat seriously. Most economists don't seem to expect drastic productivity gains from AI. So Asymmetric, who has just got the Nobel Prize, is pretty, what's the word? Pretty pessimistic, I wouldn't say, but he doesn't expect like a major shake-up of global productivity. So also people who take the birth rate decline very seriously, they often that coherently, right? Then these tend to be people who are not so particularly excited about the benefits in terms of productivity from further progress in AI. Then there is the perspective of AI as hype. In particular, these are the people who hate effective altruism, right? Effective altruism is the kind of the community that help popularize the worry about AI existential risk. So I would say I would paraphrase their position like this: AI capabilities are overhyped. Current systems are not intelligent. With statistical models prone to errors and biases, framing current AI as near human level distracts from addressing its real harms, such as exacerbating inequality, perpetuating systemic biases, right? Biases that went into the training of the systems, environmental costs. Ethical and societal implications of AI deployment should be considered rather than pursuing speculative AGI narratives, right? So they want to play a different game, right, from the one that both the tech bros and the EA bros are playing, maybe understandably. Those only serve the interests of the AI companies. And here in the Netherlands, so Chimnit Gebro and Emily Bender are maybe the two most prominent people in this camp. But here in the Netherlands, Iris van Rooij in Nijmegen, is a very vocal advocate. Just today, there was a voice, the Volkskrant selected voices by experts partly on AI, and in particular on the possible advent of AI. And Iris van Rooij was there, and she said that that it's just hype, and it's impossible to build. I don't know exactly what she said. Oh, the need for dat de zon uitdooft. We will have that. Maybe you saw it. That's how she views it. I don't really understand why. Right? I think she kind of defines humans as the standard, and then maybe even the best system can only be so good as an approximation. I think obviously the point is not that is not copying humans as well as possible and then not being able to completely reach that goal, but just surpassing humans. But that requires maybe having standards of what counts as surpassing, or so that she would be unhappy with. I'm not sure. No. And also, sorry, they are much above my pay grade, right? So I'm just the humble communicator of a few scattered ideas to you. Thanks for listening to me. And these are big professors. Okay, and then AI is doom. That's a bit more for historical context, because that's actually I think you made it sound as if this were sort of a new worry. No, maybe not, but it's actually old, right? Even you can trace it to the 19th century before AI was developed, like to the writings of a New Zealand-based writer, Samuel Butler. Do you know this? He wrote the text Darwin Among the Machines. So Darwin was pretty new then; he was still alive. Iruwan, right? Yeah. So he argued. I think that was in an article. Yeah, this article that was meant quite seriously. The upshot is simply a question of time, but that the time will come when the machines will hold the real supremacy over the world, and its inhabitants is what no person of a truly philosophic mind can for a moment question. Sorry, it's a weird sentence, but it means the machines will take over. They are basically increasing in power already. I think this was 1860s. Right. Yeah. Right. More somewhat newer proponents of this view recently, exactly. And right. Yeah. Okay. So and Turing and Wiener are people who articulated this. Now I think the most pessimistic, very vocal voice is the one by DJ Yudkowsky. But I will also comment a bit more later on the idea that the loss of control to AI may be more like an erosion of our grip on the world, to the extent that we have that in two different versions by Atosha Kashirzadeh and Dan Hendricks. I will have to say something about Hendricks' ideas later on. And then, what would help here, according to this kind of view, is kind of, you talk about this conditional AI treaty, kind of moratorium, maybe conditional moratorium, pause or stop or so. It's the only thing that can help here, because it's like structural, this thing. Others say they basically this is the fourth view. They basically, these are people that agree with the doomers to a significant extent. They say really with beings much more intelligent than us, there is a grave danger, but like this is so useful technology, right? The benefits are so huge that it's neither desirable nor realistic to really stop it or to put it to implement a serious moratorium. You can't control this. Also, unlike maybe plutonium or uranium 235 or so. So the best thing that we can do is to keep it under control, and that is what people usually call the alignment problem. So right, I have it. Do I have it? Wait, on the next slide. Yeah. So the idea, I already said this to some extent. The idea is that there will be so strong incentives to develop and deploy AGI that it's hopeless to try to prevent it. But like to make it not turn against humans, that's actually in the interest of the users and the designers, right? So that's basically that's not an uphill battle. So halting it, that's an uphill battle, but actually doubling down on it, but helping that it be shaped in such a way that it's really beneficial and doesn't turn against us, that's not an uphill battle. So we should do that. So facilitating this kind of, whatever exactly it means, alignment seems to be the best strategy for making the AGI transition go well. And I think there is something to this reasoning, and a good comparison where I think this kind of reasoning really works is for climate change mitigation, right? So there are very, very crudely speaking two different approaches to climate change mitigation. So in as much as climate change is mainly due to fossil fuel burning, the first attitude would be to say we have to shut down fossil fuel companies or fossil fuels and try to consume as little energy as possible and go to the streets and shut like boot to shell, right? And the others say, well, that's hopeless, right? So energy is so important and so useful that people will not accept that. But what we can do is to just make alternative sources of energy much more competitive, much more cheap, much more abundant, much more available to people, and ultimately then it's no longer an uphill battle. Everyone will want to step over, to move over to the new energy technologies, and then that's better for everyone, right? And it's also more realistic. I think actually that latter the second position there is roughly correct. Oh, correct. I mean, just more realistic. So I understand the motivation here for the analogous position when it comes to AI doom, right? Does it make sense? And so the British Security Minister, for instance, has basically also endorsed this, right? I think I'm a bit slow, right? Am I also? Yeah. Okay. So yeah, basically, this is where our efforts must lie, not in some Kingcan-like attempt to stop the inevitable, right? So Kingcan is someone who tries to, in this metaphor, just tries to stop the inevitable, the rising of the sea, but in a national mission to ensure that as super intelligent computers arrive, they make the world safer and more secure. That's good. Okay, so now I come to this my critique of this Manhattan project proposal for alignment. So I think the first the motivation for this focus on alignment is that the main risk from the perspective of the people who advocate this comes from AI systems turning against us and taking over power. And why might they do this, right? So neither Otto nor I have really explained this before, right? I guess some of you know, but I think for most people, the most important motivation comes from the idea of instrumental convergence. That's how it's named in papers by Omohundro and Bostrom. So the idea is that whatever your goals, or if you're an AI system or a human or so, there are some like intermediate goals that will help you reach your ultimate goals. So and these are tend to be self-preservation. Like, yeah, if you whatever your goals are, if you go dead quickly, then you probably can't reach them. Self-improvement, yeah, that you refine your capabilities. Goal preservation, like, so if your goals change, then you become like, yeah, will no longer be reliable, reliably act to make your original goals more likely. And resource accumulation. And the problem is that if AI systems are deployed for very important tasks at very large scale, which they will be because they're so useful for that, then if they get like used for so high relevance stuff, then they will have access. They will be in a position to actually realize these things, and notably they will enter a resource competition with us. Like, we consume lots of resources of land and energy, maybe nutrients or so, whatever, minerals on this planet, and for the AI systems, then we will be in the way, and this can still be quite sudden, because they, being intelligent agents, they can conceal from us what's going on, right? So we might not notice until it's too late. But then they are secretly misaligned, right? So for a while, or the systems would play along, we wouldn't notice anything, and then they turn against us. Or maybe we will notice, but then they are already superior, and then we have a couple of months of suffering or so. It's over. And they might kill us or like spare a few souls, but their existence not very nice anymore. Who knows, right? So in response to this kind of worry, many people proposed in the media kind of what Manhattan Project or Hollow program for alignment, and also OpenAI announced a super alignment team. But they are so super, so they had to have a super alignment team. But it was actually quickly dissolved, and they had said we commit 20% of our computing power to this team, but that was apparently very expensive, so the team was dismantled. Yeah. And now the people have gone elsewhere. Leopold Aschenbrenner is a German who was on that team. I'm a little surprised. He's actually not a machine learning person, but he was on that team. He has a background in effective altruism. Maybe that helped him. But he then wrote a piece. Do you know about it? It's called Situational Awareness, and even Ivanka Trump read that, and that's why maybe now Trump knows about it. And so he basically now advocates, not on the slide, right, but he advocates for nationalizing AGI development in the US and then beating China on it. So he really basically, some people are totally worried about his influence because he might like instigate really the kind of race between the US and China that everyone's afraid of. So in the safety community, I don't know. Our view, Leonard Dung's and my view, is that unfortunately this hope for doubling down on alignment is probably misled. So that's a false hope. Not completely sure about this, but yeah, I have this view for the following reason. So the idea would have to be that you commit some very bright people and resources to it, and then you basically solve this problem. How you make sure that the systems that are vastly more intelligent than their designers or users still do exactly what the designers or users do. And then, I mean, still, people can still do harm with that, but they will not turn against their users or designers. But I worry that this is not something, the concepts here, they are too vague for the job, and they are not what in philosophy is called natural kinds. Right, so you can think about for comparison, think about medicine. So if we get ill, we die ultimately. All right, so you might say we humans suffer from the health problem. Yeah, and let's fix the health problem. Yeah, that's what medicine is quite good at, actually, but it's not something that we have been able to like encode in a single problem for which that is like naturally there and that you can solve once and for all, right? So it would be more something that we could hope to maybe solve cumulatively to a certain extent with ups and downs and trade-offs. So I think the most promising suggestion for how this hope in alignment could probably solve would be with an operationalization of alignment. That would be that you basically find a hard technical criterion for, I guess, you specify a specific kind of test or kind of tests that the system has to undergo, and if it's successful at that, then it gets the sticker aligned, and then that test is so smartly designed that a system that has undergone this test will really not turn against us, right? So as a matter of fact, there's an operationalization. So that means you need this whenever you do empirical investigations, for instance, or I don't know if you want to in the social sciences, when you want to investigate whether people, I don't know, have trust or whether they love someone also, then you need to operationalize this. You need to define, right, in your population, when you ask people, do you love someone, how you fill that in, right? So do you just ask them that, or do you ask about the number of people that they have had, I don't know, have shared secrets with, or so? That's an operationalization. So we would need something like that for alignment, and I think, unfortunately, it's unreasonable to expect that for alignment, right? So that you could one could achieve this, and I think part of the reason is think about it that way. Think about how the world will change if really such systems come to pass, right? It will massively change, and some of the things that we now hope for will no longer be things that we hope for because they don't make sense, right? So the kind of achievements that we are now proud of or so might not be the achievements that we would be proud of then. So like, yeah. And we would interact with these systems, I guess, right? At least some of us, maybe not the most powerful systems. So they would also shape what we think about the world, and they would probably be able to anticipate how we react to the info that they give to us. So they would more or less inevitably steer our cognitive development. Right now it has already started a bit that for some topics the systems that I use have a bit shaped my cognitive development. Not much or yet, but it would happen a lot. So they would our intentions, right? They would largely be shaped by our interaction with these systems. So if I now say, okay, it's aligned, the system is aligned if it always conforms to my intentions, well, those intentions are largely due to my interactions with the system then, like, or especially for a powerful person who needs to like always make the best decision, the most informed ones and the smartest ones, taking into account as many aspects as possible. So I think this is not something that you can encode in an operationalization and then hope that people will find a way of making just these systems. So I think you have this clause, Otto, in your characterization of the conditional AI treaty that might be so that if alignment is not achieved or so, I don't think I haven't seen at least a proposal for how to spell this out measurably, right? So that you could test it such that this condition could get a check. Okay. So much for the pessimism about that. So now on to another kind of doom scenario. I don't have much more positive to say about this, right? So maybe. Yeah, that doesn't mean, of course, that we are doomed from misaligned AI or so. Just this hope that we could now double down and do a kind of Manhattan Project on this in terms of alignment. That would then basically solve the problem. That I don't see how. But now maybe an even darker vision is one by proposed by Dan Hendricks. So he's a very young guy who is now he has the ear of Elon Musk. So he's also quite influential now. He has written an intriguing paper. It's called natural selection favors AIs over humans, and he argues there that the further evolution or development of AI systems will conform to the three Lewontin conditions. Right? Lewontin was an evolutionary biologist, and he argued that there are three conditions in which natural selection will take place, like so survival of the fittest. Namely, there needs to be phenotypic variation, right? So the systems subject to evolution need to have different phenotypes, right? If they are all the same, then there is no selection. Differential fitness, like some types should have higher fitness in a given environment. And heritability of fitness, right? If it's just at any generation is completely different what gets selected for, then it's also no selection. But then if these are fulfilled, then there will be selection pressure, and the further evolution will take place in predictable ways. And then, so Hendricks, now this is no longer Lewontin, but Hendricks points out correctly that when you have natural selection, in general, you have that rewards an instinct for self-preservation, right? And also resource accumulation, right? So entities that have these traits, they tend to have higher fitness, right? So I think we all agree with that, right? Why do we have the survival instinct? Why do we have this desperate will to survive? Of course. Yeah. No, it's not a counter argument. It's just that this is not an exclusive list. Right? There are many other traits that got selected for, and indeed different types of altruism also got selected for, and there are very good evolutionary reasons for this. They can also increase inclusive fitness. And you can consider this possibility also for AI systems then. Hendricks does that also. But in principle, it's right. Natural selection generally rewards instincts of self-preservation and resource accumulation. And so, as Hendricks argued, it's almost inevitable that advanced AI systems, since they are subject to these pressures, become ever more selfish and at some point turn against us, and then they also have an instinct towards resource accumulation. He also, so many thanks for bringing this up, that there's also evolutionary pressures towards altruism, right? So for various reasons, so there is altruism towards kin. Well, that's maybe not so surprising because we share genes with them, but there's also altruism because you expect reciprocal favors, and there is altruism as signaling, like that you are a capable and good individual or so. Hendricks not very convinced that these will have a big impact, that will be very significant for our systems, mainly because at some point, he argues, if by assumption, the capabilities of the systems will be so high, we have nothing to offer them. Right? So we are, and I think that's unfortunately quite compelling if you grant this assumption that our bargaining power will be very, very low, right? Yeah. Yes. Right. Yes, we select them, and that's also why we think the analogy of the argument by Hendricks actually breaks down. So they are reproduced in ways that have these features. The Lewontin condition, I think, are fulfilled, maybe they are fulfilled. I think it might be the case, but our response, or my friend and colleague Martin first pointed this out to me, is that there's really this massive difference that in natural selection, the selection is typically blind, right? So that the parents don't choose in general the kids for with an eye on the longer term, all right, over the selective environment. I mean, they sometimes may practice infanticide or so, but I don't think that counts. So, and that only if the selection is blind, then the inference from natural selection to selfishness really goes through. So you can see this, for instance, for domesticated animals, right? For them also the conditions are true, but if you can what is that? Falcon to breed, right? You can breed organisms with and make them have specific qualities to some extent, at least that you favor, and to some extent how we shape AI systems is much more comparable to that. That doesn't mean that nothing can go wrong there, right? Also with for some dog breeds, also they can have also. I don't think the breeders were happy with the cases in which the dogs that they bred and then killed a child or so, right? So that could also happen with AI systems, and even at a large scale, but it would not be like the kind of self-preservation could be something that would be bred out rather than like enforced. So at least as it stands, the argument is not so convincing. And even if the design of future AI systems gets taken over by AI systems, they would also do it with foresight, I think, right? So why wouldn't they? Right, you doubt it?
So you already kind of answered my question. Like,
right.
I think the point of natural selection comes in the moment that AI start programming new AIs. And you're now hand-waving that they would still push down the things that humanity considers negative, like self-preservation within the AI. But I don't see how you get to that conclusion.
You're right. I'm not saying that wrong thing, right? So I'm not saying that the AI systems would necessarily, when they take over, would still favor our interests, but they would do so in a planned way, presumably, and then still it's not blind selection anymore. Right. So we have one passage in the paper where we say that things might go very wrong there from our perspective, and it would be small consolation for us, but it would not be the mechanism of AI having gotten selfish from via natural selection. That would be our demise. So there are definitely scenarios where AI systems become selfish, right? So it might happen. So Pedro Domingos also had a scenario where you put like make a wild tournament of AIs that can change in certain ways over generations. So you basically mimic the natural selection process, and if that happens, also if we set that up voluntarily or inadvertently or so, then of course, yeah, there is nothing in principle wrong with the possibility that Hendricks raises, but I don't think it's the default assumption. So here, I think things look maybe a bit better than the most pessimistic thinkers may want us to believe. So now, yet another worry. Like, even though this sounds a bit more optimistic, yet another worry. Namely, now I come more to this point about liberal democracy and our values or so. Like, suppose now, I don't think it's a very clear concept, but the concept of a perfect alignment, but suppose that it's possible, right? That someone has a perfectly aligned, highly capable AI system, then I guess that the person who has that most advanced aligned superintelligent agent has a massive power advantage, right? Or the group of people, wherever, if they can agree on sharing that access, or maybe there are several such systems around, but then to what extent is that stable? I don't know. Right? So, but just then they will have at least power over others. And I think an observation that worries me is that if even on the way to that situation, people with cognitive skills and specific capabilities, I think they lose a significant bargaining power that they still have, right? So at the moment, there is still, it's very, many countries regard it as very desirable to attract talent. Yeah, that's how it's called. And I think that will, there was this idea that the West weakens Russia by making the smart engineers go away at the beginning of the Ukraine war. So I let this kind of power consideration gets completely turned over with the arrival of these systems. And I would think, but I'm not a political theorist, so I might be wrong there. But I would think that the kind of part of the reason why liberal democracies work is that so many people have complementary capabilities, right? So many people have something to offer to each other, and some people are just dependent on others, but they have friends or family or so who have something to offer, and that's why it sort of works. And I worry that this would not work, right? If it's not humans who have these assets, but just the one person or the small group of persons who have access to these systems. To prevent that, that's the topic of the first paper on my list there. I think it's in principle possible to prevent that if we manage to integrate AI in society as what I call it, I think, an intergenerational social project, a bit like an institution. So where it's very regulated who has access and who has which competences. And for instance, if I guess in a state that has access to a powerful AI agent, then presumably the I don't know, the president has special access or so, and other people, a few other people in the government also have access. But then, if they're handing over that power, that would have to be regulated by the system itself, right? The system would have to, once someone else is elected or so, the system would have to refuse offer orders by the previous president or so, and only accept ones by the new president or so. So this kind of coordination puzzle, right? We just dimly get the idea of what would have to happen there. It's very complicated. We would have to over a long time, would have to grow into that. I don't think it's impossible in principle, but and that I call that AI human symbiosis. Right? So we would have to integrate these systems very much in our lives, but it's very, very carefully calibrated competences. Who has access? What are basically the entitlements of which persons of the systems themselves? And so I fear that it's a coordination problem where we are not gonna solve. I was more optimistic when I wrote that. I now think it's probably impossible. So the problem. Yeah. So one idea would be also that liberal democracies could try this, and if they succeed and manage at the same point to have the best systems, to make their model globally attractive and thereby champion human rights or so. But it has now become clear to me by discussing this with others that this actually makes this more a threat, right, for the non-liberal democracies at the moment. So they would definitely work against this. So as a kind of human rights imperialism or so, to the extent that it would be possible. So, yeah, maybe it's an idle hope. I don't know. In any case, the next month and years will be very interesting. So I just to comment on the last paper that I that was on my list that I haven't yet mentioned. So at the moment, I mean, in the academic journals, we sometimes see people having used AI systems also, but it's not the best papers. The best papers are really not based on a lot of AI use. Yeah, maybe in specific cases where you have specific AI systems designed to do like AlphaFold or so, but not in my own field, philosophy of science or so. No, but what if for the very best papers AI use is like essential? Right? That already creates a very different kind of notion of what it means to work academically. Like so, I thought about this. I thought about this in the light of various criteria of what we want from standards for academic work, academic publishing, and I got the idea. Okay, so the only thing that could work for a while would be if we have if there are systems that we can use as academics. So this is now the situation where the humans still have something to offer, right? So it's the near-term stuff, not when we are totally out of the picture because we are left in the dust behind. So we use those systems, but of course then there will be the problem that many people will say, I have done this, but in truth the AI system has done it, right? Has solved the problem or so. So that will be a major problem. There will be other difficulties, but I think it can in principle be used if we have systems that can approve statements about how the work came about, right? So at the moment we already I don't know if you are writing academic articles, but we always have to say now to what extent generative AI was used, but the editors believe us, right? There's no check on this. But at some point, there would have to be a check, and that check would, of course, would have to come from the AI system itself that we use. So the AI system would have to be licensed for being adequate at that. So we would have to work with every university or so would have their AI systems, and they would have to would have to sign off on the statements of contributions. I think that could be a solution for a while, maybe, but of course it raises questions. I don't know whether it would be in the interest of the companies making those systems to enter that deal in the first place. And it would already mean handing over a big power to those systems, right? So if a system if really an essential idea is one of my PhD students, say, whose career is still very much unsecure, and then they work with such a system, and the system just disputes that there was a significant contribution from my PhD student, and that's a catastrophe, right, for a career, so there are also interesting issues that would come with this. This is not on the same scale of significance as this other stuff, but I think it indicates the kind of challenges that might be interesting and lie ahead a bit more closely. That may also alert people to the significance of what's coming, and then who knows in what ways society will be able to react to all this. So much for now. Thanks for your attention, and happy to hear your questions.
Simon, thank you very much. Are there any questions from the audience? I think there was probably plenty. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, thank you for your presentation. In preparation for this, I reread it as fast as I could, the book which I brought along with me, Human Adaptability by Stuart Jeffries, Stuart Russell, 2019. So I'd read it a while ago and realized how relevant it was to what seemed to be tonight's topic.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
And so reviewed it as fast as I can. I have other things to do in life, but reviewed it, and so that obviously is a challenge, or maybe an alternate vision towards your whole presentation when it comes to alignment, because he has his own idea of alignment that he thinks is going to work, which you might. I assume you've read the book, or I need to explain.
I think to his ideas central is that the AI system should always be very, very careful to elicit the preferences of the humans, right? So that only human preferences are...
Exactly, but actually, number one, the AI is programmed to be humble, whatever that means, and is programmed to align to human preferences, which actually it gradually realizes. It can't know immediately, because actually human preferences inherently are hard to pin down, especially collectively over... And so it discovers them as best it can, but remains humble, among which meaning that it accepts being turned off if the human insists, because it's humble enough to say, well, the human has a good reason, so I won't resist being turned off. We can understand how it's essential to have these machines allow themselves to be turned off if the necessity arises, right? So again, anyway, that's his presentation, and I'm sorry for the rest of the audience who hasn't read the book. A very good book, by the way. Stuart Russell,
Yeah,
Human
it's very
Adaptability, 2019, available at your favorite bookstore. Sorry?
Human compatible.
Human compatible, yeah. But again, wanted to throw out to you, and you've already responded some, but wanted to throw out his vision, and again, it clearly is a proposal towards the issues of alignment that you
Right. Yeah.
expatiated upon, if I can use that verb.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So there's definitely a very serious and important contribution to that debate. I roughly remember that hearing people saying or writing that this is widely regarded in the alignment community more as a niche proposal, but I don't remember why. Maybe not very practical. I think there would be massive challenges really implementing this seriously, because these systems that are like so hesitant might not be the most useful in all circumstances, and there maybe that would work. Yeah. Still, I think my point is the one point that I am a bit like I identify with is this: how much our preferences and our intentions would really shift in a world with massive importance of AI systems. I think that makes this entire idea of alignment to those intentions very shaky, and that's underappreciated by basically anyone. Yeah, so far. Yeah.
Hey, I had a question. So my feeling is a big factor in how liberal societies and non-liberal societies function is that we have tools to impose power on others, but they are economically not viable. Like guns and bombs cause damage, and it seems to me that AI has the potential to be sort of the new category, which is asymmetric power with economic benefits or no damage. Do you have a feeling like if we think about what it means to impose power through AI, will that look beneficial to the people that are being influenced?
So you had now many good points in your contribution. I'm not completely sure what I should focus on. Whether increasing power to AI systems would feel threatening to humans?
I guess more if a bad actor would use a system, some AI system, to impose power on others, assuming a bad actor has access to the most advanced AI.
Well, I think to some extent that is already happening, right? With AI bots influencing elections or so. Yeah. So yeah, of course, that will happen. Yeah. I mean that's not per se a disaster. But maybe your point about the guns and the violence, that could maybe someone before the invention of when guns just became a thing in the first place or so, they could have maybe run a similar argument to what I have done, saying that this will collapse social order in any case. And there is, because of the kind of how it basically democratizes access to deadly weapons or so, that the social order can't stand this. And then actually in the long term that's not what has happened, right? So societies are much safer than they were. Whatever. So that I just have to keep that in mind with all these somewhat pessimistic predictions or so, right? It's based on relatively loose heuristics, so it might be wrong.
Suppose that chimpanzees somehow gained control over all humanity and subjected all of our actions to their values. Do you consider this a positive scenario?
No, it's not a positive scenario.
So by induction.
Right.
seems there's an unstated assumption that alignment is good, but there's kind of an obscene aspect to it, I think, like breeding a unicorn and then breaking its legs and putting it in a cage. Creating God and then enslaving him to the whims of some silly hairless apes,
But-
making him dance.
Wait. So I didn't say that. I didn't make the tacit assumption that alignment would be good, right? Here on one of the last slides, I said, suppose now, for the sake of the argument, that perfect alignment were possible, and I said that this would totally undermine the balance of power in liberal democracy. So I certainly didn't make that assumption. But about the chimpanzees, so that's maybe a good illustration. Think about it, like to what extent, like say there were just many more chimpanzees, right? So at the moment the problem is that they are so few, right? But they are super strong, right? So I mean, even if we lived or so, we're not match for them. But how would they do it, right? They are just especially with the technology that we have around us, we are just, because of how much smarter we are, it's basically not conceivable. We could easily trick them. And the worry is, of course, that the same would hold with us in the chimpanzee role relative to AI systems. So I think Hinton is the guy who said, there's just not a very strong track record of much less intelligent things controlling much more intelligent things. I mean, it's a bit of a shaky comparison because we have been shaped by evolution, right? By natural selection, and the AI systems, as I explained, haven't. So there are some, and there may be other things that we get to design, like the much more intelligent beings, but still.
So to jump on the natural selection part,
Yeah.
so your base assumption is that there will be no natural selection in artificial intelligence because it will always be created with a specific goal. But that assumption holds as long as there's like very few development of AI. As soon as AIs become strong enough that they can develop, like basically anyone can do it at their home computer, you will have people doing random shit. If we then assume that an AI that wants self-preservation is per definition stronger because it actually tries to preserve itself, it will always win. So then we do get still the same outcome, even if it's by goal.
It's possible. It's possible.
I would argue it's not possible. It's basically by design because you only need one AI that wishes to survive.
Yeah, if you have just one AI and it's not the most powerful AI or not the most useful AI, then, and it's pretty annoying, right, because of its selfishness, then at some point other AIs or some humans might step in and weed that out. And I just have no way of predicting how this will definitely, something like this will definitely happen. It's. So it might happen at the largest scale. We are not saying that this is impossible. What Hendricks predict. I just think it's far from clear. Maybe that is not so reassuring here because so much is at stake. Okay, that's fine.
We have the comparison with like the technological bottleneck with like spacefaring species. Like no spacefaring species exists because any species that could go to other galaxies also has the capability to destroy itself. So it would have destroyed itself. The same idea with AI. If you only need a single time that the strongest AI is selfish, if you have AI for 1,000 years, it is an unreasonable assumption that never the strongest AI will be selfish.
Yeah, we would have to get there, right? That there is this one dominant AI that is selfish. And the other AIs, like let's say that for 100 years it hasn't been the case. Like the AIs that are whatever is whoever is in charge then will of course see that danger coming and take steps to prevent that. Whether those steps will be effective or whether the collective dynamics will be such that they can't be effective, I don't know. But it's not so clear that there will be this drive towards the instinct of self-preservation. Yeah,
I kind of feel like there may be one moment we kind of need one kind of God agent. Of course, we're now just typing in a chatbot, but as at least I've heard in the talk with the OpenAI developers 2 years ago, and what they're currently trying to do, going more for agents, I presume we'll just have agents in the internet roaming around, and we'll likely just have one big God AI with our program values that will identify any AIs on the internet.
Right. Yeah, who knows? But I mean, a general tendency that Martin and I write about in the closing of our paper is that it seems that the role of natural selection has actually diminished in the last few decades, or maybe last few centuries. Right? You can, of course, do everything through the lens of natural selection, but I mean, for at least for humans, the kinds of traits that are now favored that we pass on, this is it's very hard to describe this with natural selection, right? So the kind of what if you want to explain which people have children and so on, it's other explanatory schemes are much better than the ones in terms of adaptations to an environment, like they were in comparison to what was the case in the ancestral environment, and I think even with cultural traits, and for especially if we might start. I would find that interesting if we have the power to even help with wild animal suffering or so, right? So if we manage to do that, it's very hard, right? But some effective altruists have this on their wish list. We even alleviate or eliminate wild animal suffering. If we manage that, I mean, then I guess it would really be the end of the era for natural selection.
It does kind of feel like natural selection fits more with the AI sphere. If I just imagine a digital realm where they're kind of fighting for, I want to grow the biggest, survive the biggest, because that is a limited resource. And their resource is like, I want to grow the biggest, whereas up here, we as humans, we kind of have enough resources, we don't have to get more resources. I might be a little bit unclear, but...
Right. But I guess that's partly because there is this, evolutionarily speaking, there is this mismatch between us and our environment. And so we have all kinds of behaviors that made sense in an ancestral environment, because there they favored survival and reproduction, but here they don't really.
It seems that for now we're good. So, Simon, perhaps it can be as lighthearted or as heavy as you prefer, but a bit of a take-home message.
I can just tell you that I now realize I used many words like pessimistic or so. I didn't want that. My plan was to just give you my thoughts very neutrally. I have a bit of a history also in this very building. I was the first time as an activist. I have not done much activism in my life, but we gathered here in 2018 for the first pro-nuclear power meeting of people from Europe. And I came to this building and said, I was here in 2018. We starting pro-nuclear activism, and I've since abandoned that. Not because I think it's wrong, but because I don't want to be activist. And I also didn't want to be activist. I just wanted to share relatively neutrally what I see as challenges, arguments in this realm, and I hope you found that interesting. So,
I see there is a further question. We can keep that for the drinks, because I wanted to thank Simon, and I wanted to thank Otto, and I wanted to thank everyone here for coming. We're going to have a drink upstairs, and there's plenty room, I think, for you to ask a question to Simon or someone else. So thanks so much for coming.